Welcome back to the Brandon K Show. I am your host, as always, Brandon K, and I'm here today with my friend, Mr. Myles.
Myles, what's up, Brandon?
Today's topic is dealing with anxiety. We are in the middle of Dealing With Week. I just posted the Dealing with Alcoholism and Addiction episode with my friend Brett, who does the Super Sober podcast. I
Nice.
just posted that, and now we're going to get into it about dealing with anxiety. So, Miles and I both deal with anxiety.
Right.
Are you anxious to be here on my show today?
Yeah, a bit. I'd say so. I've
It's
actually never done I've done one podcast before with a buddy that does one, just kind of on stupid, like kind of stuff with sports and stuff. But this is different for me, But I'm never really scared of a challenge.
that's great. Yeah, I don't know if it's to talk to people about their real issues. That can get people anxious.
Right.
I'm doing it all week, the dealing with week. I'm going to be diving into it with people because I'm really open about talking about stuff. I feel I struggled with it for so long
Yeah.
about not wanting to open up. And then once it's like I started to open up, then it got a little easier over time.
Right. Yeah, I feel like with me, I've been always like an open person in certain situations though, right? Like the anxiety can kick on if I am gonna be talking to someone professional for sure. That's
Mhm.
definitely a big one for me. Like I'll definitely get anxious and I'll get in my head, those worries and fears pop up, and it's just like if it's something that I'm probably not like comfortable with, like right, then I'm gonna feel more anxious. Definitely, I mean, almost in common sense with, I'd say most people personally, but like others have it worse than others. So, I mean,
Yeah, well, we're learning how to deal with anxiety in the healthy way now. I was addicted to Xanax and alcohol, and I've had to learn how to do stuff like this or get jobs or do stuff sober.
right. I mean, yeah, I was addicted to Xanax from when I was like 14 till I was 18, and like it's crazy that that's actually a pill that they give to people with anxiety because I don't suggest it personally. That's just my opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, could we ask? Is Was it prescribed to you as a kid?
No, it was self-prescribed. Yeah, it kind of just was one of those things, got in. I was definitely smoking weed before and stuff, but yeah, like I actually, that's honestly, I could say one of the most favorite drugs I did, and I liked it for a while, but it made me a really bad person inside, and it brought anxiety with it to me, honestly, because I was pretty young, right? So like I couldn't notice. I mean, 14, 15, that's kind of at an age when you start noticing your own anxiety, but I definitely didn't do it for that. It was just a drug use reason for the high, definitely, but it also, like, when I didn't have it, it brought on anxiety for me personally.
Oh well, yeah, because I mean, especially if you're addicted, you're gonna
Right.
have the withdrawals. There's a few things I know about Xanax. One is that I mean, it's for anxiety. It helped me feel like a normal human.
Right.
It took away like any discomfort and
Yes.
at the beginning. Like it's like, oh wow, this is kind of what it feels like to be normal. I don't know if I was high in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, and that part of it would work great. I feel like it's a big confidence booster too.
So then the other thing I know is that people would say, I don't know if it's because they took way too much Xanax, but then you have memory problems, like where some people don't even remember it after they've done it.
Right. I mean, a lot of people would be like that, and I believe even if you drank, it would be worse on it because I drank often on it, but I was usually just smoking weed and using Xanax. But like at first, when I started using Xanax, it was definitely like that. I didn't remember my past day because I
Mm,
would pop like one or two of them or whatever it was, and but as I progressed my tolerance with it, it was weird that I could actually remember my nights before, and I think that's just a tolerance thing.
and since
Um,
this is going out where everybody can see it, we want to say that you've conquered this. You're past. You have some time away from Xanax and alcohol now,
right.
and you're thriving. You have a great job, and you kept your job through all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and even that, like, since that was like a young addiction for me, Xanax has always been a thing. Personally, I know we're sitting on anxiety topic, but as talking about drugs, which actually caused me some big anxiety, was alcohol and cocaine. That was my new thing. I didn't really do much Xanax daily like I did as a kid. Like the last 4 years, I was using alcohol and cocaine every day, pretty much. Definitely alcohol every day, cocaine every other at least. But that caused me. I'd have that like. I was looking up some stuff on anxiety earlier, and it talked about or it was a panic disorder stuff, and it talks about when your chest gets real heavy, right,
Right.
and you start feeling less your breath, like less breath, what do you call it, I'm getting mixed up here,
Hard to breathe.
hard to breathe, right? Yeah. And I witnessed that multiple times, whether it was, I think it was just definitely overuse, and also I'd have to say it kind of involves the vape too, a little bit, vaping.
Vaping. Well, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I quit smoking a few years back, and I learned the importance of breathing.
Uh-huh.
They even say that like people go outside to go smoke, and really, it's just to relax. It's just to breathe. They say that I've heard them say like it's just about getting that breath in, just having a big inhale of
Right.
anything. And when we're smokers, we're gonna have a big inhale of smoke. But like I go out now and I just go out and take a big breath of air.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely better for you. um
Like the importance of breathing, I think, is important to anybody who's out there dealing with anxiety. Don't take it for
Definitely.
granted that we're not supposed to always be like in these shallow breaths. We should be taking these deep breaths.
Right. Like a little example, just recently I went to a new big job opportunity interview, and I literally had anxiety for, 4 days, probably a week prior, like
Yeah.
consecutively it builds up, I'm trying to get stuff right. I have a buddy in the same position that's been there for a while, and I kind of talked to him about it, that anxiety levels out a little, and but still I was anxietied out a bit up until that interview, and even after it, it just was kind of an intimidating one as well, but I definitely worked on my breathing before that interview, and did a prayer, meditated a bit, and that definitely calmed me down. My dad has always been really good with that, like teaching me to stay calm my whole life, and it only usually helped when he would tell me, because I couldn't personally get into my own head at certain anxiety trips, but that is
What
the
advice?
tough part. That's the tough part.
What advice does your dad give you?
Just certain anything, just big events or stuff, and when I'm working myself up, I had a problem with that. I'm dealing with certain things in my life, and what anxiety is, right? All the worries and fears, and it's building up so much that it's overwhelming and it's overpowering your mind and physically your body, to where you either end up having a panic attack, anxiety attack. But he would just tell me, like, just, like he would put his hand on my shoulder and just like, hey, calm down, let's breathe this out. Like, let's take deep breaths in, out the nose, out the mouth, honestly, if I was in a big trip and I was really, in my head very badly and wanting to just work myself up, he'd make me some tea and we'd do that together. And that kind of was just calming,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Well, that's it.
definitely.
I mean, I don't know if he dealt with it himself, but he knew the right advice to tell you.
Yeah.
It's like take a step back,
Right.
slow down. Even when I'm at work and I'm like in danger because I work at a bar and I'm in
Yeah.
danger of like breaking a cup or something, they'll be like, slow down. If I work too fast, I'm gonna start breaking shit.
Right.
So slow down is good advice. Breathing is good advice. I wanted to ask you about this whole job opportunity. Do you have the rumination before you're going in? Like I call it rumination. That's when you're obsessing.
Yeah.
So you're like, do you have it before and after?
You talking about the interview?
Yeah, so after the interview, because a friend and I would say like the worst part about anxiety or social situations is the before and the after, because you're just worrying about it. You're worrying
Right.
about what's gonna happen. You're worrying about what already happened. When you're kind of in it, it's just happening, and it could be like a little 30-minute interview or hour. It's just like it comes and goes so fast. It's more about
Yeah.
the worrying before and after and the ruminating.
Yeah, personally for me and my experience even before, but this one was a pretty big one for me. It was only in front of 3 people, but like I would say the first, like the 3 days upcoming to it, and the day of, I was in my most anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right before it, I kind of got myself what I said I did, and said a couple prayers in my car before, and meditated with no music on, and and got myself in a calm state. And I just try to keep that eye contact in there, and posture, right? Like those simple stuff that we know what to do personally from professional experience, or advice, right? And but while I was in there, it was just the questions that they was being asked kind of got me into a little anxiety, because I knew some of the answers to the questions, right? But some of them were worded differently, and it was making me think more, right? Because I had an answer for certain stuff already, because I've done an interview there before, but it just kind of switched me up. So I got a little bit more anxiety brought onto me in there. But I was able to stay calm, and it's just about like eye contact and keeping your voice, proper use of words, definitely, I have a problem with that. I talk with slang all the time and stuff, and obviously I could switch that over when it's in a professional manner. But after, I would say it was just kind of like a worry, like how I did. I'm instantly in my thoughts, like, man, did I mess up on that question? I didn't try to beat myself up too much. I'm pretty, now that I'm sober and I have a lot of clarity and I have a lot of peace, and I pray a lot. I think I have a better mindset where I could talk myself into the positive side more,
You
right?
brought up a good thing, which is like communication and like, because I dealt with this, and I still have anxiety, but like I work towards a communication degree. I've taken like 5 to 10 communication classes. I did Toastmasters, I did improv, but I still have anxiety through all that. So it's like, um, but at Toastmasters they would give me the advice of like avoiding the ums and ahs and like not shaking and stuff, like
Yeah,
kind of like your dad with the hand on the arm is just like saying like, hey, we're here to kind of get through some of this stuff, but I have such
yeah,
intense anxiety that like it's there now, it's there when I'm on stage, it's there wherever I am,
yeah,
but
definitely.
it's kind of like the advice that somebody who doesn't deal with anxiety at these Toastmasters, who have worked through maybe their public speaking
Mhm.
anxiety. They don't have a crippling anxiety like I have, but like
Right,
they've worked through their social anxiety and their public speaking anxiety, and then they give you the tools of steady yourself, avoid ums and ahs, think about what you're gonna say, eye
right.
contact, kind of what you're bringing up now.
Yeah, like they're prepping you and stuff, right? I mean, that's what
Yes.
you're saying that you learned in those classes.
Yeah,
Um,
and like I'm wondering if you've gotten that advice.
yeah, I mean, from certain like certain jobs that I've gone to, personally, I just kind of talk to higher up people, right? That are in my job. I'm an electrician, so I would talk to people that maybe know more than me on certain aspects of what I should know, right? Like, because I've been around the trade for a while. But there's certain stuff, like for instance, this one is different. I'm getting into like a different side of the trade, even though it's electrical work, but it's going to be lineman work, and it's kind of, personally right now, I'm having like I got a job offer, and I'm kind of stoked. I'm pretty stoked about it, right?
The one that
But
you were worried about this whole time? You got
yes,
the
I
job offer?
I
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
Woo,
yeah,
awesome.
thanks.
Awesome.
I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm also anxious, and I have anxiety about like that first day, that first
Now you
week.
get to be anxious all over again
Yes,
because you got
yeah,
the
the cycle continues. And I feel like it's gonna be like that until I get my foot in, like that first day, that first week, I meet some new guys. It's just a whole different environment for me. So I just feel, it's weird meeting new people at first, right? I'm pretty well off on being talkative and meeting new people personally. It's just about seeing how their system works, right? Making sure, I'm just worried I don't mess anything up, right? We could think of all the other
sure.
the negative side stuff, but I know a good, I have a good headspace about it. So
Do you
you
do
know
any
I'm
like positive affirmations or like self help stuff?
right. I mean, personally, I've just been reading a lot lately too. Just like, even about my new job, I'm trying to, like, because there's some stuff that is about like new tools and new material, right? So I don't want to really go in there not like something that I would never do before. I would just be like, yeah, I know everything, I'm gonna be all right, right? Personally, in my addiction, that's the way I'd look at things.
Sure.
Today I get to be like, you know what, I want to research some more stuff and learn before I get in there, not to look like I'm all smart or nothing, but to have a better approach at my first week.
And it ties back to anxiety because when we're prepared, when we're fully prepared, we don't have as much to worry about.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Just like certain people do certain different things, and you're like, dang, that could probably work for me, and meditation and prayer and all that stuff. Even just reading a book, just calming your mind down at like night before going to bed rather than like watching TV, you
Right.
know. I try to do that. I've been a big TV person my whole life. I need the TV on to go to bed, but lately the past few months I've been able to turn it off and read with the light on, get my eyes sleepy, go in, and try to. I feel like this just a better peaceful sleep. I was gonna ask you a question if you don't. I need to ask you something, right? Do you have like have you struggled with social anxiety like
Oh
a
yeah,
lot?
my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it kind of kicked in as a teenager. Puberty is when I started to worry about what others thought of me, and
Right.
and a lot of bullying in my early life, and then you're kind of numb to it at first, but like in high school, then I was like, oh, if I say this, they're gonna respond like this, and then I just the anxiety started from high school, and
Right.
really just got worse and worse um, since then.
Yeah. Right.
Always, I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to do something like this,
Right.
or be a comedian or something, or do something fun. And but in my when I got into college, took like a singing class, and I just would have panic attacks going
Mm.
into class, and like I kind of had in my mind like, oh, I can do it, and then once I got there, I started shutting down,
Yeah,
and
that stage fright.
and then I started to use alcohol to numb out, and I would literally be drinking at class,
Mm-hmm.
or drinking before I go to class or after class, or drinking to get through things, and
Right.
that went on as long as I had access to alcohol. That went on till I was 23,
Mm.
and I tried to get sober at 23, and when I wasn't drinking or doing Xanax, I got introduced to Xanax at 23, and the doctor prescribed me Xanax, and I was sober. But then
Mm.
as I got the Xanax, then I started to overdo the Xanax.
Mm-hmm.
It was 0.25 milligrams, and I did the whole bottle within like 2 days, like 30.
Gee.
But I mean, it was a low dose, and then I got higher doses over time. But while I was sober for 3 years in my 20s, I then had to try to push through my anxiety, and then I knew that this is going to be my challenge. This is my challenge in life, is that if I want to do anything, if I want to be on stage, or even jobs, or have any success in life, I have to push through this, or get a girlfriend. It's like I have to push through this anxiety, and so it's been a journey since then. After 3.5 years sober in my 20s, I threw it out, and I said I'm just going to drink and do Xanax again.
Mm.
So I spent 5 years just drinking and doing Xanax again, and
So
doing them together. And you mentioned speed, but I had some Adderall in the mix, and then the Adderall also causes the anxiety, and caffeine causes anxiety. So then I got in this habit of like needing the uppers, then with the downers, then with the uppers, then with the downers.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and that would probably cause more anxiety, would you feel?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, unless I'm numbed out so much with enough alcohol and Xanax, or it's always it's always different where but I'm always looking for the balance of that not feeling anything.
Yeah.
And so, it just it's almost
Whatever that
it,
whatever that next fix was.
whatever it takes to feel normal, or like happy, or be able to push through my anxiety and like work towards my goals. And I felt like I was working towards goals. I'm on this channel right now, the Brandon K Videos channel. In 2012, I was just drunk, like interviewing people, and like on the street interviewing people and like getting into all kinds of chaos. But it's like I had to be on something to do it. So
Right.
the last 7 years has been a process of getting over my social anxiety to do it without drugs and alcohol.
Right.
Which is
I feel you on that, man. It's crazy. I feel like a lot of people are like that, using drugs in certain situations for that, and then once you do it, it's just like, okay, this works perfectly until it doesn't anymore for some of us. Um,
alcohol is a social lubricant, and everybody admits
oh,
that.
yeah,
So if you can
exactly.
do it, if anybody can do it responsibly, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go out tonight and drink a couple beers, and that's gonna be my social lubricant." And
Yeah.
when we're alcoholics and addicts, we're going to take that to the extreme.
Yeah, every time.
So
I,
part of this story I was telling, and like, so at 23, I got my first therapist. So I've been in therapy now since I was 23. I mean,
right.
with only a couple small times in between where I didn't have somebody, but I've had like 5 therapists since then. I've been with my current one like 7 years,
Oh,
but
wow.
but before that, I was like jumping around a little bit. But the point is that it takes a lot to open up, and,
Yeah.
and a lot to heal and open up from traumas, and it takes time, and and yeah, it's like a process. I guess that's
Yeah,
what I'm
it's
trying to
definitely a
say.
process.
Is you don't, even if you were getting off drugs or whatever, and then you're like with me in my 20s, I was facing all my anxiety head on, and
Hmm.
it's like you can't expect to be healed after just because the drugs are out of your system.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, definitely takes time, and you know, um, I think personally for me, certain things that I went over with my counselor down in treatment really helped me. She kind of like asked certain questions that I could never ask myself, that I couldn't even come up with. Like certain just random ones I couldn't come up with, like, because there's times I've talked to myself all the time, like figuring out, reevaluating things. And like she just hit certain notes on questions where I answered them and I felt something different out of, and it was like, that relieved some of my I don't know, all of it, anxiety, pain, fear a little. All of that, I think counseling and therapy is a really good thing. If I think some of that starts kicking in with our self-will, though. You could go in with your self-will total, all in control, and you just won't like anything that a counselor says.
Right.
Right. And that's not going to help your anxiety, really. Maybe it could help you while you think you know everything, and that's going to help you in a certain way at that moment of time. But then right when you walk out of that room, I feel like you won't have accomplished any good out of that conversation. Right. So, and
Well, I would just say from my own experience, because I was a very hard-headed 23-year-old,
yeah, me too.
and I would get into those therapy, and I'd been told therapy was not was bad my whole life. Like, oh, why are you going to pay a therapist to talk to you and stuff? The
Yeah.
answer to that question is what you just said, which is outside perspective.
Right.
If I'm not getting any outside perspective from anybody, or nobody's asking me these questions, I'm never going to even consider them. And I could
Right.
sit for a decade and not come up with anything that's really going to help me. But an outside perspective, we're better collectively with our friends and with our therapist or whoever. Eventually, someone's going to say something that clicks, and that could change your whole life.
Right.
Something that clicks with you. So yeah,
Hmm.
as a hard-headed 23-year-old, they could be giving me advice, and I wouldn't even be hearing it. I just go home and
Yes.
you could
I mean,
be pissed
and
off.
were you in your addiction at that time? Right. Sometimes of it.
Well, I I met my therapist, and then I got on Xanax for a little while, and
Uh-huh.
then but no, I was 3 years off, and I was with a therapist when I was sober in my 20s, but
Okay.
that was this hard headed period where like we were sitting there talking, but like I don't feel like I was getting anywhere with her,
Yeah.
because I think like I just had a block of just like not accepting the information, but
Right.
there must have been some progress that was made, but eventually, I learned how to talk things out with her a little bit, and
Yeah.
then eventually, for whatever reason, I relapsed, and then I did have therapists while I was in my relapse that I could talk to, but
Hmm.
same kind of deal. Was obviously it's easier to talk with your therapist when you're doing well than when you're doing bad. So I would go.
Right.
I had a male therapist, and he would cheer me on when I was doing well, but then when I wasn't doing well, I probably wouldn't see him as much and stuff like that. And
Yeah, makes sense. I mean,
then I got with another therapist, woman, and she was very much like telling me what to do, telling me like, oh, you need to whatever, maybe stop drinking or break, break up with your girlfriend or like change your situation. And that was like where I wasn't gonna listen at all. And like I another period where like I didn't want to make those changes.
right. That's a big one too. But like there was stuff that I really just didn't know what to do or couldn't deal with, and that like caused a lot of anxiety and just like fear and I don't know, what do you call it? Not resentment, but like resenting myself, like thinking I'm wrong, that also caused a lot of things,
Uh, yeah, like well, I want to say self pity, but it's more like so
Yeah, it's like
like shame and guilt, maybe.
shame and guilt.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
that's a toxic thing that you know a lot of people. I have so much of it. I can't imagine anybody doesn't have shame and guilt.
Right. I mean,
Like
and
shame and guilt is always like, oh, I feel bad about myself. That's kind of like shame, and that's like
yeah,
a huge part. I think I got books over here on the shelf about how important it is to heal shame to get over anxiety and stress and trauma.
right.
A lot of it comes down to healing the shame.
Yeah. I don't know. Today I just think so differently. I have a different perspective. Like I could literally instantly snap of my fingers think of how I reacted in my addiction if I was getting like I could remember like good advice being given to me and I would instantly get worked up. No, like instantly. I don't want to hear it, Like
Mhm.
nothing's going to work for me. This is not right. I don't want to listen to that. Bye, and like and it's sad for those people that were maybe trying to help me, and I didn't give them that time because they probably see that I'm hurting. They're trying to help me, right?
All they were probably trying to do is help you.
Yeah, I know, of course. I couldn't help myself. I didn't want anyone's help, for a long time. And I remember like feeling that anxiety feeling when my dad could get into like a calm sense of a voice talk. And it literally was like a trigger for me. Like I hated it. Right. Right. Like I didn't want to hear that voice. And it would give me that, I don't know, just like I need to get out of here, anxious to get out of here and
Well,
not listen.
it's a good description of like what it's like to be in addiction because that's like your addiction fighting back and saying like, oh, if I listen to this advice, I'm gonna have to change something. I'm gonna have to
Right.
and I mean I feel like that's the voice of the addiction kind of
Yeah.
keeping us from hearing any good advice or wanting to make changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so do you think like you said your 3 years of doing that therapy, um, as you were sober, maybe you were saying kind of like you were dry or you just you like were you worked up or like was the anxiety dry, you weren't working a program, but like did your anxiety get a little bit better through the therapy? You feel like or no?
Probably
Or
at times,
yeah,
but I really did, and I struggle with schizoaffective disorder as well, which is
like you were almost like kind of fighting it though in a way.
well, no, like it was coming in, and I was like, what? I even had expectations, and like I hadn't done the things that were recommended to me, but I hadn't found solution of any kind. So I was just sitting there in my mind and
Mm-hmm.
spiraling and then thinking like, oh, why am I sober and I'm spiraling? Like shouldn't I be healed by now? Like imagine 3 years being sober and I'm probably making all the wrong decisions and I'm
Right,
not doing what's suggested of me and then I'm like, shouldn't I start feeling better? So that's what we call a dry drunk
right.
is somebody who's hasn't found any solution and they are still in their self will and however you want to say
Mm-hmm.
it. It's like you can be a miserable sober person and
Yeah,
when I was 26, 27, I was starting to be a miserable sober person who was not medicated on medication and my head was just driving me nuts.
right.
That's kind of what I remember from that time period is getting into some trying to I was working at Disneyland and 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 then I was like so resentful at certain things, like even simple things, but like having to be there or who I had to work with, or then I had a situation where I had to go to the hospital and then I couldn't get a doctor's note, so I got in trouble, and then I was just like resentful of
Right.
um everything was going down, and like you said, or like I was saying, like just the ruminating and the spiraling was like
Hmm.
at an all-time high for me, and I was like, I didn't know how to I didn't know how to deal with anxiety. I didn't know how to deal with life.
Right. That's the biggest one right there. Dealing with
And
life.
resentment. So you
Yeah.
got to find a solution to resentment, whatever that is for these people out here. But like, if all I'm doing is sitting around being pissed off all day, I'm not gonna have a good life.
No. Right. I didn't even know what a resentment was personally. Right.
Mhm.
Like until until I was explained. I've been holding all these resentments. Basically, all my resentments I've held my whole life since I was like 13 years old, and I've suffered spiritually. It was basically for an excuse to keep living the way I am, right? To
Mhm.
validate myself in any possible way, the way my head thinks is the right way, and the way I want to use is okay. And this person did that person did that, the blame game, and play that victim card. Like it was all just validation, resentment towards like anything, any person, any job, to validate myself that it's okay, and it's I'm gonna keep going about it my way. Almost, that's the way I look at it personally.
Yeah,
um
as a description to people who might not know what self will is out there, like it's
right.
like I was gonna say, it's always blaming somebody else.
Right.
So if you can live your life, and I know people like this who are not happy and who are just always blame someone else. And if you are always blaming someone else, you can't take responsibility for what you're doing. You
Yeah.
can't make any changes because it's always someone else's fault.
Yeah.
And so,
You'll never figure out your own mistakes along the way there. I mean,
well, I've learned an immense amount of okay, I've learned an immense amount of this life changing concept of taking responsibility for myself and my life.
right.
And so what that is, when I take responsibility for everything in my life, there's this guy online, actualize.org, Leo. He talks about 100% responsibility. My friend Roger also mentioned a book about radical acceptance. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I forget the name of the author, but the point is that, or radical, well, anyway, so I think it was actually radical responsibility. But anyways, you take 100% responsibility, and then you have control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't have control over everything in the world, but you have control over what you choose to happen. You say when something happens that, like, I put myself in that position, you know,
Right.
if even for, something like death or whatever, it's like you can say you can choose to get through that
Mm-hmm.
and work towards getting through that and making peace with it, or
Suffer.
you can suffer. Yeah,
Right.
we choose our own suffering. Suffering is optional. That's from
Yeah.
Buddha.
That I love that. I've been saying a lot of that lately. I heard a guy say it, and it has it like every meeting I'm in. It's almost stuck in my head, but I probably said it too much already. But I hear a lot of people talking about them relapsing and then dealing with pain or a loss, and it was just a simple like quote I saw, and it's like pain is necessary, but suffering is optional, right? Like throughout my addiction, I suffered. I chose to suffer.
I'm
And
90% sure that's from Buddhism.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know if it said, yeah, I just read it somewhere like a couple weeks ago, and it's just been running in my head.
yeah.
And it's so good to remind myself with that, honestly, because I need to remind myself that.
And if
And
we got into my whole story here about being sober in my 20s, like I was suffering for no reason, and
right.
it was optional. I mean,
Yeah.
I learned at some point along the journey that there's things I can do, whether it's self help or a program or listening to
Hmm.
others or therapy or whatever. There's things that I can do where I don't have to be miserable ever.
Hmm.
I mean, because if I'm having a bad day, even today, it's my birthday. Did you know it's my birthday?
Oh, what? It's your
Today,
birthday?
today is
Happy
my
birthday,
real
Brandon.
belly button birthday.
That's right.
I'm older than I want to be, and
But you're alive.
I'm alive. But I don't know. It's something about birthdays. They can get 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 depressing for some
Yeah,
people,
I
and
get you.
and for myself. And so, but it's like here I am. I'm doing my podcast. I'm going to be pushing through. I'm going to be pushing through and doing something because my point was about my point was about you can have a bad moment, but you don't have to have a bad day.
That's right. I mean, it's all with positive and negatives. My whole life, I've been a pretty like genuine, like respectful dude. Like to people in my life, to friends. I've always reached out. I had a friend that would always tell me like, "Dude, you're the only friend that ever asked me how I'm doing." And like those
See,
things would make me feel better. And there were certain ways of like how we read about the selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of all our problems. And definitely, I have been selfish and self-centered my whole life, but whether you're going out of your way to help somebody and you're doing that in a selfish way. I personally, when I did things like that, I didn't look for that at first,
right.
but when you read about it more, and I try to stay away from that, but it's almost like being of service. You're helping someone with their day. You're helping someone, get some knowledge, whatever it is, just being there for someone. And it still at the end helps you, right? But is that selfish or not?
Oh,
Like,
we have to learn what where that line is, because I mean, when it comes to enabling, you could be helping somebody and then
right.
you're really hurting them. So I'm always having to find that
That's true.
balance. I'm always having to find that balance. I keep that in mind because I'm
Mhm.
a major enabler.
Yeah,
So, but
I
so
think.
tough love, or like being a good friend. They say like a good friend is somebody who tells you how you're fucking up, but
Yeah,
but it's like some of us aren't comfortable with telling people how they're fucking up, or
yeah.
so like
I mean,
it could just be helping people all day, and then you're not ever telling them the truth. There's so many different ways of like fucking up service.
there really is. Um, yeah, I know we've kind of we're treading away from the anxiety topic, I guess, but realistically, it goes all around.
Well, we're getting into this service idea, and I could connect it back and say that service is a way to get out of anxiety,
Right.
because I learned majorly, and it's the one of the
Getting out of self.
the mottos of this show is desire to inspire, which is that I'm here to share with others. I'm not here to make myself look good.
Right.
I'm not here to try to benefit, or essentially just say I'm not just here to hear myself talk. Like I'm usually trying to say like how can I provide information to somebody that's been helpful to me, or how can I entertain somebody, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just you know I, I think, and with my in the past, my 20-year-old self, it's always like what can I get, what can I get, what can I get.
Yeah, I get you.
So that's been incredible for my anxiety in life on my show, is I'm here to share for other people.
Yeah, carry the
That does,
message.
that
I
does
mean,
help with anxiety.
as much as we can, right, in our own experience. There's a lot of good podcasts out there that I've listened to on all this stuff, anxiety, spirituality, all psychology, all psychological stuff. I know we talked about Tony Robbins before, and he said something great, just like how we're talking about like with anxiety, right? Like if there's like a point, like, because personally in my addiction, or even if I wasn't in my addiction, right, and I was still in that like self-will run riot, whatever, if I wasn't down bad, I still found ways to get into negatives, right? That's
Right.
gonna cause anxiety out like crazy, right? So like I don't know what it is today, if I'm just so close to God and I pray early in the morning and at night, and I've been taking action, right, and I'm being of service. All those things are adding up to where I have more of a positive mindset, right? And like Tony Robbins was saying something on the podcast about like when you're happy, you're collecting all that gratitude, right? You're finding the gratitude in your life. When you're unhappy, you're deleting all that. And it's really as simple as that. You're putting those things out,
Right.
and I did that a lot my whole life. I took
Yes.
things for granted. Um,
Gratitude is like a key, because like you could just run around being pissed off at everything, or you could be like,
right,
oh, I'm grateful to be alive. Look how cool that is. Look how cool that is. I'm going to learn about that. I'm going to learn about this. If you're pissed off at something and I hate you and I hate everything about you, I'm not going to learn anything about you.
right. I know this doesn't really, I don't know, it kind of deals with anxiety, but I have a good example today of how God's working in my life that I could never do for myself. Like I pulled up to the job site today, and our whole lockup where all our tools were and everything was ransacked. It was stolen today. I
Mm.
got like a bunch of tools jacked from me, a whole toolbox.
Oh boy.
About like $700 of power tools of mine are gone now, you know.
Jeez.
And I took a second and I thought of myself how I would react, right? Like before, in the past, I would probably, you know, went and cuss somebody out just for whatever to let steam off, and then you know, probably leave the job site and say, screw this, I'm not working today, I'm going home, I'm gonna go get my drink on. And like instead I instantly got into like the serenity prayer, and you know, I didn't have to call anybody. I just got to work and I had a hard working day even though my tools were gone. And like I don't know, it just like I was brought at peace. A guy even asked me like, oh, what did you get stolen? And I told him all these things, and he's like, wow, I wouldn't be as calm as you. And I just kind of explained what I just told you right now. Like, this is the way I think today, and like I have to accept the things I cannot change, and I, you know, the things that are out of our control are out of our control. I'm not going to make it a horrible day. I'm going to work the day and you know, get the job done, you know. And like for me to do that today is pretty crazy, you know.
Yeah, that's huge, man. So basically, you said a couple prayers and then and
Yeah.
then better. Like what else? What is else the other trick? Like, did you say it throughout the day? Like, did it keep coming up, or did you feel
um
it? Or
yeah, I mean, it came up because people were talking about it, you know. Like I can't even believe I'm saying this stuff today, to be honest, right? Like, but it is like, and I hate to say it, but it's almost common sense, right? With the positive, the negatives. If you're thinking negative thoughts all day, you're gonna be pissed off. You're gonna do that, right? If you're thinking positive, you're finding a way out. You're finding your solution. You're talking gratitude, like, and that's just exactly the difference. The difference from me before and now, right?
and when we talked about like we were talking about the voice of the addiction earlier,
Yeah,
it's a block. It's a block that won't let you be grateful, and it will always see the bad side of life, and
yeah,
it's going to lead you right back to your addiction every time. And it sounds like you had a moment of clarity where you're like, you saw the difference between you and your addiction,
yeah,
what your addiction would have told you in the past, and brought
yeah,
you towards a drink, and it would have brought me towards a drink too, and a Xanax,
yeah.
and
Whatever's.
fuck you,
And
Joe.
then also blaming others, not even blaming others. I would have just like, you know, cussed out my foreman or something and made an excuse just to be all pissed and like, you know, just selfish stuff, you know.
But it's because of that emotion. I mean, anxiety is like a physiological
Yeah,
thing. Anger is also like a physiological thing.
yeah,
So
it's
it's
a
like you're going to
secondary
be
emotion.
overtaken by being pissed off,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, if you don't really take that breath and say that prayer, you're going to be challenged with it.
Right, and I'm just so grateful that my mind works that way today. But honestly, it's, you know, God working in my life.
I like something that Tony Robbins said. This is going back to something you said a while back. Tony Robbins gives good advice of like when you get angry or upset or anxious, instead of like really working yourself up, he says it's how you talk to yourself. So
Right.
instead of saying like, "Oh, I'm so anxious right now," like you could change the terminology. So like, "Oh, I'm excited." Like
Yeah.
I have a great communications teacher in the past who would say like anxiety can just be excitement and like
Mm-hmm.
ability to go out and do stuff. And I think Jennifer or Emma Stone was saying like, "Oh, I love my anxiety because my anxiety fuels me to go do things."
Right. That's a big one right there.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of perspective changes you can make, but even Tony Robbins one was when you're angry and pissed. Like if you just say, "Oh, I'm a little miffed right now. I'm a little upset. I'm a little disturbed,"
Yeah.
instead of saying like, "Oh, I'm so messed up right now. I hate this person." Like if you could put it into perspective and just lower the language, like,
I
"Oh,
know.
I'm," and it's also like that or CBD, no CBT, DBT, like cognitive
Yeah.
behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is like what you did today, which is like, I'm upset
Pause.
that my tools were stolen.
Yeah.
I am upset. Here's me. I'm upset. I'm upset over this. And then like distance yourself from it a little bit. Where like
Yeah.
I don't have to be pissed off all day if I don't want to be.
Right. And I think honestly that little middle part is just like the hardest part, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
choosing which way to go. Cause I feel like instantly when you choose, that suffering or the self-pity or whatever way you're going, right? That darker side, it's gonna be hard to get out of, right? Like if you have some trigger in your mind that allows you to put something positive and look at the bright side of it, right? Like if you could do that sooner than later,
Right.
like that's the point of it. And I think I think it's different for everyone. I think it's harder for certain people. Personally, I've never thought that way until I've gotten some time of sobriety. Like you spoke about your birthday today, right? Happy freaking birthday, man.
Thank you. Thank
And this past, like in depression, right? I've dealt with depression, and I think anxiety is involved with that. Um, and I spent my first sober birthday since I was 12 years old, in treatment 7 months ago.
you. Hmm.
And I was just kind of feeling like homesick. I
Right.
got like into like a little depression mode in the beginning of the day, but I got to make some phone calls to family, and like I just like saw the bright like side of like the open mindedness and the willingness that I had to go there, and that I've been learning the consecutive 2 weeks I was there before my birthday, right? Like I was just finding those good things in today and what I have, and all the gratitude and my blessings, right? My family still supports me. I have a girlfriend supporting me through this, right? And I found those things and I got out of it, right? As simple as that. And I woke up weird. I remember having a bad dream, and I woke up with a bad attitude, but I did those things to get out of it, and they ended up bringing me like a cake to the treatment center, and it was cool, right? Like, I mean, I could still look at it like, oh, I don't even want to celebrate my birthday here, and get all pissed off, right? Like
Yeah.
we've been saying. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's just that, I don't know, positivity and gratitude and
You're talking
staying.
about that little place in between, which is where we have a choice.
Yes.
We call it
Yeah.
free will, but it's the choice between, am I gonna go be upset, or
Right.
am I gonna go lash out at people, go into old behaviors, or am I gonna try to do the right thing, or
Yeah.
do something that makes more sense? And
Yeah.
life is a learning process, so
Yeah.
is I know that I was that person in the past, so it's like
Yeah.
if I was that person not that long ago, I can't judge someone else for acting out on and I still
I
act
know.
plenty of things.
Yeah.
So
That's a funny thing too. Like once you start getting on like a brighter side of life, like each day, you look at the people that are still like self-pitying and suffering, right? And you're just like, oh well, this is easy to get out of, but you don't realize that you were there before and it wasn't freaking easy
it
at
was
that time.
never easy.
It was definitely
Never
not.
been easy. It
Yeah.
was. How old are you?
I'm 28.
28. Yeah. So you look younger, but yeah, no, you
Yeah.
had a career of 10 plus years in the thing in alcoholism
Yeah.
and addiction, and the point is that um you could have chosen to get sober anywhere along that line, and it wasn't easy. And it
No.
wasn't
Yeah.
until something outside of yourself, or the right combination of things in life, however you want to look at it. So we call it God, you can call it coincidence, you can call
Yeah.
it growing up, you can call it whatever the hell you want. But uh it wasn't until like a certain till you're 28 that it happened. I was 31. It's like
Right.
unless you got sober at 15 and never
Nah.
had a,
You know, uh,
you could like judge people and say like, and that's why I think people do judge, is because they haven't experienced certain things. So
yeah.
if you never
And
did a drink, if you never did a drink or a drug, and you're 15 or you're into 18, now you're 25, and you never did a drink or a drug, you're like, how could people get addicted to drinking and drugs? Why would they do that?
yeah. If you didn't never do it, if you never have done it, then I don't suggest to try it.
Someone has never dealt with anxiety,
Yeah.
they'd be like, why are you so anxious? Like, why don't you just snap out of it?
Right. And someone that kind of like, I had some friends that were kind of from a wealthy family and stuff too, where they were given everything, right? I personally, I was given a lot too. My dad spoiled me a bit too, but I worked around the house, I made effort for it, like he put me to work for stuff. I had chores. Like a lot of my friends didn't even do their own laundry, and they were just very easygoing. Everything's happy doodah, and like,
Right.
and they don't see that, I don't know, that those sad days sometimes or something, not as much as, maybe a regular person does that deals with some divorced parents and stuff like
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah, yeah. There's a book, I might have mentioned it on the show before, about the Prince of Abyssinia. He was like a
Oh
prince,
yeah.
and he never did anything in his life. He was always waited on hand and foot, but he wanted to escape that because it wasn't, he wanted to see what life was about, and then he learns lessons by getting out of his
Right.
situation. But it's kind of like that idea of like someone who's never been through it. They're gonna have a lot to learn.
Mhm. Yeah. I
And
mean,
I have to be grateful for everything I've had to go through. And I let
yes.
off here is I had all these addictions, and I had all these feelings and anxieties and resentments and mental issues. So the list goes on. But now I know how to deal with that stuff a little better.
Yeah. Like once you find the solution, I mean, and everyone, I mean, therapy, whatever the program, there's different things, meditation, prayer, how we do it. It's just, I feel like it's so hard, cause we're saying our experience here, I feel like,
Mhm.
cause I read into some anxiety stuff earlier today, just because I wanted to look at some, and it talked about, like anxiety disorders by genetics, like people are maybe just born with more of a nervous system than others,
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah, and that's definitely for sure true. I mean, it hits in people in different ways, like
Yeah.
I've always been good with like I was good with sports as a kid, right? But like when I come up to bat on a new big pitcher, right? Like I get that anxiety. I'm anxiety in the dugout before, right?
Yeah.
And some bigger kids that were good at hitting, I could see that they're like, I'm ready to do this, and I'm like, nah, like,
Yeah.
and
When you get into the why of it, then you got what do you call it? Like nature, nurture, conditioning,
yeah,
physiologically, genetics. There's so many different things that go into why we are the way we are. But
right.
uh, but my main message on this show is that I'm solution based. We were talking about all the different things, and there isn't just one solution to, there's some, I go out into the world on any given day and look for the solution to what I'm facing.
Yeah.
So that's the opposite. And that's taking responsibility for myself and my life and saying, what can I do? Instead of like,
Hmm.
oh, who's going to help me get through this? How can I blame the government? How can I blame my parents and the schooling and the job and tell everybody what they're doing wrong? I have to go out there and say, what can I do to change this right now?
Right. Yeah, that's it. You said it. And like I'll say for my message is like I don't even think I brought this up, but a big one for me was not having faith in myself. Right there. The opposite of faith is doubt. If you don't have faith in I mean, if you don't believe in a higher power, you're atheist, but like you could still believe in certain solutions, right?
Hmm.
That can help you. It's just about, do you want the help or not? Like do you want to make that, just like you said, take responsibility, because I mean, even it's just there's been times throughout my life that I didn't want anything. I don't want to help myself. I don't want to put in the work. I don't want to change this, right? Like you said it earlier. And it goes back to that, like that certain mindset, which in my eyes personally, it was because I've been an addict and I've thought a certain way my whole life, very selfishly and all that stuff. But if you could find a bright side and to wake up and me, for my solution personally is prayer in the morning and setting a gratitude list. Not even if you don't want to write it down, just quickly think of 3 things you're grateful for, right? Like while you're driving to work. That's what I do in the work. I could have like a million things hitting me, like, oh, am I gonna have rent enough for this month? Am I gonna make enough money an hour at this next job, right? And I can think all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I calm it down and just try to think positive things and pick 3 grateful things I am for today. And for some reason, when I pray and I do that, I have a great attitude throughout the day,
Sure.
And if something comes up like it happened today, right when I get to work,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I hit the serenity prayer, I didn't go sit on, hit my knees, but I paused and I took a time to myself and said a prayer, and I've talked even to some people there about it, like on why I'm taking this so easily, and that was even cool to me that I can explain the solution here, you
Yeah.
know like, and I'm like, what the heck's going on with me here? I'm a different man today. Like it's just amazing like what can happen in your life when you really set your mindset to those things, and it's just like the yin and yang, man. Like if you're thinking good and you're doing good, then good things are going to come to you.
Trying to bring up something attached to believing in yourself. Did you ever hear the NF song Hope?
I don't think so.
Oh yeah, this line hit me really hard. He's like, if you don't even believe in you, how could you expect anyone who's around you to?
Oh yeah, yeah,
It was fucking so fire. He says it
yeah,
like a certain way, and it's like that boils it down so much because like what I'm doing here or whatever we're doing is like if you don't believe in yourself, you can't expect other people to believe in you.
yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, and then you could sit like I could sit and do that, not believe in myself, but then still judge other people on what they're doing about things.
Or you could
Like
judge
no,
them, and then but you could also the point of that was like you're judging them for like not giving you self esteem, not giving you kudos and building you up, but you're not even building yourself up.
right, exactly. So you're not gonna
That's
get
how I live.
anywhere.
That's how I live my life. Was like, oh, why aren't people like patting me on the back for everything I do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel you.
And then that feeds itself, and then you're depressed and anxious, and
Yeah. Like even speaking about resentments earlier, like I find like if you don't find your faults and your resentments and you don't let that go, that's gonna cause anxiety throughout the day. Like because it's gonna have you're gonna
oh,
load up all these resentments and it's gonna overload already what else is going on in your mind that
oh yeah,
day.
oh there's
And that's gonna cause anxiety. So
oh I mean when you're resentful, you're not going to be on as good of terms with people, and if you're
right.
not on good terms with people, if you see them, you're going to be like anxious. That's why I've
Yeah.
learned to be on good terms with people. But
Yeah,
is
and I think
the
in
best of
general, it just takes like that thought process away from you thinking in good terms. In general, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
if you're thinking bad about this person and why this person did that, and you're blaming this, like you're just thinking all the negatives. So how are you gonna get to that good that grateful side, that good side, and let go of those things, right? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a battle. It's a battle every day, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of solution.
on that note, like it is a battle, and like some days you might not be able to break through it as easily
Yeah.
as Myles did today, or I've been able
Right.
to. It's like, and then but you have to give yourself kind of care and compassion through that too. Like, okay, I'm having a bad day. My bad day stuck around a little longer today. My anxiety stuck
Yeah.
a little longer today. I didn't get to say this about anxiety, which is that some great advice I learned was is that like the most anxiety will last a panic attack is like 15 minutes
Hmm.
if you don't feed into it.
Yeah.
It's not true for everybody, I'm sure, but for myself, like if I'm not feeding into it, um, I then have a chance to just say, "This is gonna go away. This is gonna go away." All I have to do is just sit here and just breathe through it, and it's gonna go away. Because I used to get so bad that I would be disassociating,
Uh
uh,
huh.
and I would be worried that I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm gonna lose control. Worried something horrible is gonna happen. The end of the world is gonna happen. I'm just like sitting there, and I'm just like, "This is gonna happen." I'm
Yeah,
buying.
yeah,
I call myself delusional.
yeah. You're working yourself up though.
I'm working myself up,
I
and
did the
then
same
I still had to
thing.
learn these tools like give it over. Let's get through this moment
Hmm.
by moment.
You're gonna be okay.
And usually it won't even take 15 minutes to get through it if I have the right if I have the right mindset.
Right. I did some stuff similar to that too. I'm
So
glad I know we probably kind of waved off a little bit of the anxiety, but a little bit, but we brought it back around.
oh, yeah. We got it all
You
in there.
know.
So this is the middle of dealing with week. Check out if you got this far in this episode. Check out the one I just posted. Dealing with alcohol and addiction. You got to watch that one too, Myles. That's with Brett from the Secret
Yeah,
podcast, and we
definitely.
got. I was just watching it here as I'm posting it. It's a lot of good information,
Right.
and we're gonna have a lot more good topics this week on depression and grief and trauma.
Cool,
So
man.
it's gonna be a
Yeah,
lot.
thanks for letting me come on, man. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to do it. We had a great talk. I think we went over some good stuff out of our experience. We're not no professional in psychology over here talking about anxiety, but we had some good examples out there. And
This is what
uh,
I would like to hear people talking about in life.
I
So that
kind of popped in one more thing that you talked about, and this is it. We'll end it. You talked about the breathing thing, right? Like I would just suggest to anybody out there, like that's willing to do like those breath treatment classes, you know what I mean? Like in the sound healing stuff. I did
Yeah.
that in
Oh, yeah.
treatment.
Those are
That
cool.
that brings some peace. I don't know. Sometimes it's probably expensive certain areas, but you could even buy it yourself or just meditate at home if you're going through that, you know, and I think that's a good way, a good little solution if you're, you know, people are willing to do that. I've done it before. So
I mean, yeah, the list goes on. Meditation on YouTube, hypnosis on YouTube,
right.
binaural frequencies on YouTube. Like even
Yeah.
just putting on these some of these videos like this have helped me a lot too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
If
when you're
you-
going to bed at night or whatever's.
So those sound bowls, it's all about the sound bowls.
Yeah, that's a good one. I really enjoyed that.
All right, I'm gonna end it here. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, Brandon.